On today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, both Tank Dell and Nico Collins has goals that they want to reach. Are those goals possible with the addition of Stephon Diggs? And with the addition of Stephon Diggs, where does Dalton Schultz fit within this new offense? Cody and I dive into all of that on today's episode.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Welcome in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers, to today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Thank you to all of our first-time listeners and viewers. Do us three simple favors. Subscribe, like, and comment to the Locked On Texans podcast on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. Thank you to all of our returning listeners coming back to listen to Cody and myself continue to talk Texans. On the other side of the screen, Texans Credential Media members and Sports Illustrated's own H-Town made. See the 2023 playoff Texans shirt.
Am I really H-Town made? Really quick, I do get confused by that because I moved to Houston when I was 10 going on 11. So I've been here like 20 years. Yeah. So it's like you can say I'm H-Town made, but I'm not from H-Town. Yeah. You know, it's the confusing part of me, you know?
You know what? I want you guys to answer that in the comment section. But Cody Davis, ladies and gentlemen, I'm your Texas football analyst, born and raised in the city of Houston. John,
true H-Town made.
True H-Town made. John, some sports guy, Hickman. We got a lot to talk about today. Cody, go ahead and take it off.
And on today's show, we're actually going to talk about a variety of things, but mainly is going to go towards the offensive side of the ball. To close out this week's installment of Locked On Texans, we're going to have a little fun by talking about which former Texan we wish we can go back in the past, take them at their best, and add them to the 2024 Texans. But when you talk about the 2024 Texans, you can't not do it without talking about Dalton Schultz, who played a big role in the Texans' success in 2023. We are expecting him to have that same type of progression for this upcoming season. However, with the addition of Stephon Diggs and with a more dangerous and explosive wide receiving core,
right,
we don't know how Dalton Schultz is going to have an opportunity to impact this offense. But when you look at this wide receiving core, John, everybody got their eyes set on the goal, both as a team and individually. And when you take a look at what Nico Collins had to say, he had an opportunity to speak to our good friend DJ Bieniemy over at ESPN. And after signing his extension, he came out and said that his goal for 2024 is to record a minimum of 1,500 yards. And John, he is not the only one who has their eyes set on having a big year for the Houston Texans in 2024. Tank Dell, a couple of weeks ago, we had an opportunity to listen to him on $1 Million of Game podcast when he said he also wants to reach over 1K going into his second season. And John, I think Tank Dell would definitely have a realistic opportunity, because if he did not get hurt and play more than 10 games last year, I think he definitely would have had an opportunity to finish his rookie season with 1K. However, John, I do want to look at and see what is the realistic approach for both of these guys reaching their goals, because the number one thing with the Houston Texans for this upcoming season is the fact that they have a lot of mouths to feed, especially when you considering that you added an all-pro caliber wide receiver in Stephon Diggs, and he has recorded over 1K in 6 consecutive seasons. I do want to mention this. I do believe that the Houston Texans have the quarterback in CJ Stroud who can actually go out there and make sure that every single one of these wide receivers not only put on the show as a team, but also put on the show on the individual level. We already know CJ Stroud had an opportunity to do something similar to like this during the 2021 season when he was still in college with Ohio State, when he was playing with Jackson Smith-Njigba, playing with Garrett Wilson, and of course Chris Olave. We remember how explosive that team was, but I don't think that they're going to have an opportunity to reach all of their individual goals, because at the same time, you also got to keep in mind that this is a team that definitely wants to continue running the ball, and they have an improved rushing attack with the addition of Joe Mixon.
Yeah, absolutely. When you look at the list of receiver trios that reached 1,000, only 5 teams have done it. The last team, the 2008 Arizona Cardinals, led by Larry Fitzgerald, Anquan Boldin, Steve Breston, the 2004 Indianapolis Colts, Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne, Brandon Stokely. Before that, it had been done in nearly 10 seasons. The 1995 Atlanta Falcons, the 89 Washington team, and the 80 San Diego team. One of the things that I think is a trend in this, as I look at these numbers, 15 yards per catch, 15 yards per catch, 16 yards per catch, 16 yards per catch, 16 yards per catch, 15 yards per catch, nearly 17 yards per catch. For this trio to reach 1K, because let's make no mistake about it, Stephon Diggs, will he take a back seat? Maybe, but it won't be a complete back seat to where he's not competing for 1K. But they're going to have to do a very good job, and I think Houston has the receivers to do that with Nico Collins and Tank Dell to get those yak yards, to have over 14 yards per catch. But when I look at Nico Collins, and I talked about this on the All Texans 22 podcast with V and Leo, you can find them on YouTube, All Texans 22. When I talked about Nico reaching 1,500 yards on their podcast on their Wednesday show, I think it's extremely difficult because of the addition to Stephon Diggs, because you still look at the talent that's in the tight end room, which we'll get at, because we still look at Joe Mixon as a running back that can be a dual threat out of the backfield. So 15 seems kind of tough. And with all of these trios that has reached over 1,000 yards, again, guys, it's only 5. The closest just so happened to be Larry Fitzgerald, 1,400 yards, 15 yards per catch. And Quan Bowden was right there at 1,000. Steve Breston was right there at 1,000. So I guess you could look at 1,431 and say, okay, that's close to 1,500. But I think for Nico, who has came in since day one and said to himself, I want to be the next DeAndre Hopkins and Andre Johnson for this franchise, this is his own gold standard. This is his minimum that he wants to reach. It's doable. No doubt about it. I think Houston can compete for add their name to the 6th team in NFL history to have 3 receivers go over 1,000 yards. It's been done before. It's not like it can't happen again. And with Bobby Sloyd leading the way with CJ Stroud, it's not unfathomable. But who takes the back seat is the question, right? Tank Dell's coming out saying, I'm better than I was last year. I just saw an article with Sam, I think it was Sam Munson maybe. I can't remember exactly, but the article was centered around Tank Dell rewriting how receivers play football. So you can look at Stephon and say, man, were you brought here, and this is just a question, were you brought here to get this team over the hump? Maybe so. Veteran leadership, ton of experience. A ton of playoff experience, which this team doesn't necessarily have. But who takes that back seat?
That's an interesting question. Here's what CJ Stroud had to say about everybody eating in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think nothing changes. It's like I tell guys, because I get that question a lot from people just walking around just anywhere, Astro game, whatever. And I'm like, man, it's football. You're open, you get the ball. And my thing is, you got to pick your poison playing this. Like, who you going to double? Who you going to cater to? You got 5 dogs who are able to get the ball in each given play. So I think it's fine. I know Slow has done a great job of being more creative and has put different personnel packages out there, guys in different positions that going from inside to outside. I'm very excited to work with Coach Slow again. He's done amazing so far, OTAs, and will continue to do such. But yeah, man, I think that past experience of playing with Marv, Jax, Garrett, Chris, J-Mo, Mameka, Julian, like those type of guys, they'll tell you too. Like, I know they'll probably have said it before, but they'll tell you like they made me better and I made them better. You know, that's my job is to make everybody around me better. So I'm excited, man. It's been healthy competition. Like, I know Garrett, I seen his interview today. He was talking about Ohio State, how like the receivers, like if Garrett made a play, Chris is like, nah, watch this. Like, it's the same thing here, which is, you know, really cool to watch. And, you know, as a quarterbacks, me, Davis, and Case, and Tim were the same way too. So healthy competition is the best way to grow and get better. And I think that's what it's about. You see how excited Diggs gets for Tank when he makes a play, and Metch gets excited for when Nico makes a play, and Tank gets excited when Rob makes a play, you know, so it's amazing. And, you know, we got Noah coming back too, which is going to be amazing. And I'm excited. You know, been there, and a ton of guys, there's a ton of talent. Steve's showing up. Really, everybody's really been doing. Jay Wayne, Johnny, you know, so, man, it's been fun.
Yeah, man, that's CJ Stroud talking about, you know, everybody eating. And we just talked about the top 3 guys, right? Not to mention number 4, John Mechie. Everybody's, you know, highlighting him so far through this offseason. You know, who's going to win out the 5 and 6 battle, the tight end position, which we'll get into. Like, you know, the conversation that we hadn't necessarily had is how does Dalton Schultz fit within this offense? So Cody and I will get into that on the other side of the break. Before we talk about Dalton Schultz and where he fits into this offense, I want to let you guys know about Game Time, the authorized ticket marketplace for MLB. And they make getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app go down closer it gets to the first pitch. Guys, they got killer last-minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets, not just MLB tickets, but concert tickets, comedy tickets, theater event tickets, everything that's near you. They make it easier. Even when the NFL season's back up, they make buying Texans tickets very easy. And listen, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets, NFL tickets, Usher tickets, Ashanti and Nelly tickets. You know, it don't matter what tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase.
It was like I wanted to be here. I was very adamant with, you know, my camp on that, and that was like, you know, I felt it from when I got here. I mean, I talked to you guys about it. Like, here just felt right. And then obviously, you know, we had all that success last year. That's where I wanted to be, dude. And I wanted to, you know, be a part of something to turn the team around and build something special to the city of Houston. So, yeah, it was where I wanted to be.
That was Dalton Schultz talking about why he wanted to come back to the Houston Texans, signed a 3-year deal in the offseason. Will be Houston starting tight end. We know that Houston did draft Case. Jordan is still on the roster. Houston has about 4 or 5 tight ends. Tegan Coriano is also in that room right now. It's going to be very competitive for the 2 and 3 spot, but I think Stover and Jordan will win that out. But when we look at Dalton Schultz and the question of where he fits within this offense, I think for Dalton Schultz, with the addition of Stephon Diggs, and let's be honest, if it wasn't for the addition of Stephon Diggs, you still look at the potential emergence of John Mechie, right? So there's 2 guys ahead of Dalton Schultz in terms of the presumed targets. But I think where he fits is a defined role of being the security blanket for the passing attack. Right? I think this team will look to, you know, I think Houston's going to go a little bit more vertical this year. You got Nico Collins, who, you know, did a very good job of hurting defenses vertically last year. Tank Dell coming back did a very good job of hurting teams defensively, vertically last year, excuse me. I think when you look at Stephon Diggs, Stephon is a guy that can win within 5 yards, 10 yards, and 15 yards. I don't know how much more vertical he can go now in his career, but he's still a receiver that I can trust Houston to go between 10 and 15-yard route concepts and win against DBs in the NFL. But I look at Dalton Schultz as a guy that if we need to dump it off, we need to dump it off. And last year, Dalton Schultz for this Houston Texan team, nearly 11 yards per catch, right? Pretty impressive for him as a tight end that was, I think, had up and down moments for Houston because of how much he may have not been featured in the passing game, but was most impressive for Dalton Schultz last year. He was number 2 for Houston in first downs, receiving first downs with 35. And I think that's when you look at Dalton Schultz and, we talk about Dameon Pierce. Where can we see the most improvement for him? And I say all the time, it's not necessarily the yards, but it's what you do with the opportunities. For Dalton Schultz, those catches, replicating 35, 40 first downs for Houston, I think that'll be major for this offense. A guy that can continue to help move chains, and that's where he is showing his work. 3-year deal. He's going to be here for at least 2, I believe that, right? Houston does have a competitive window where they could reach the AFC conference game, where they could reach the Super Bowl. In order for them to do that, everybody's going to have their job and a role and be good at their role. Do I see Dalton Schultz replicating over 600 yards next year? Well, if we just talked about Tank Dell getting 1,000 yards, Nico Collins getting 1,000 yards, and Stephon Diggs getting 1,000 yards, where does that leave Schultz yardage-wise? I don't know.
I think Dalton Schultz is definitely going to have an opportunity to replicate his same importance to this offense, just like we saw in 2023. And I understand that this team is built better. I understand that this team has a lot more weapons when you look at the addition of Joe Mixon and Stephon Diggs. But, John, to me, I go back and I take a look at Dalton Schultz's history. And I go back to, and I hate bringing this team up. I really do, because you know how much I hate this team. But all you have to do is go back and take a look at the success he had with the 2021 Dallas Cowboys. To me, that's one of the best versions of that franchise that I've seen over the last 10 years. That was the year where they went 12-5. They had a realistic opportunity to make it to at least the NFC Championship game. But as we know, and I'm saying this with a big ass smile on my face, they always fall short in the postseason, and I love it. I love it. I love it. But at the same time, that was arguably the best version of Dak Prescott that we saw. You had Ezekiel Elliott rushing for well over 1,000 yards. And not only that, you also had Tony Pollard rushing for over 700 yards. Their wide receiving core, even though Michael Gallup got hurt with, I believe, a season-ending knee injury at the time, that wide receiving core with Gallup, Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, those guys were balling. And what did Dalton Schultz do in 2021? All he did was went out there and have a career year with 800 yards and 78 catches. And look, I understand that he's not going to have an opportunity to replicate a career year like we saw in 2021, but it just showcased that Dalton Schultz is always going to be a plug and play guy where it doesn't matter who he's taking the field with, whether he's taking the field with a stacked team like he's going to do in 2024, like he did in 2021 with the Dallas Cowboys, or if he's taking the field with a team where it's like, okay, who's going to step up because this team is hampered with injuries? He's always going to find a way to be a very productive team for any organization. And that's what I think Dalton Schultz is going to do here in 2024. All he does is add another weapon for CJ Stroud and for this offense. Another reason why I say by the end of the 2024 season, we're definitely going to have an opportunity to look at arguably the best offensive team in the league. Dalton Schultz, man, is one of the, I don't want to call him underrated, but at the same time, I think he's one of the best tight ends in terms of it doesn't matter how you utilize him. He's always going to be productive on the gridiron.
Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. Before we close out today's show, thought it'd be fun, and I saw this on Twitter. I can't remember who I saw it from. Please forgive me, dad brain here. But if you also saw it on Twitter, this topic of any former Texan from the past that you would like to see on this current Texans team, please let me know who said it so we can make sure we give them their credit. But Cody and listeners, if there was hypothetically, of course, if there was any former Texan that you would like to see on this current Texans team, and let's keep it realistic. Mm-hmm. Let's go back to the David Culley years. So the 2021 season.
Mm-hmm.
What former Texan would you like to see on this team?
Former from the 2021 team.
The 2021 team, David Culley team, that team won 4 games.
I remember that team.
30th in
You know
pass
what?
in scoring offense. Yeah.
You don't even got it. Justin Reed. We've been having a lot of questions about what to expect from that defensive backfield. And say what you want. Like, I don't think you can say anything bad about Justin Reed. Like, he's not a all-pro caliber safety, but every time he stepped out there on the field, whether the Houston Texans was winning 10 games or whether they was winning 4 games, he was one of the most productive players that the Houston Texans have had over the last 5 to 6 seasons combined. And I think if you had an opportunity to add him to what they already have, of course he's still going to be starting. You could play around with the idea of who he's going, what role is he going to play. But I think if you had add Justin Reed to what the Houston Texans have right now, then are you looking at a perfect team? Because at that point, you really have no type of complaints on any level.
You know what's crazy? Justin Reed was the guy I was thinking about rolling with. By the way, Lonnie Johnson Jr. was a part of that team. He's back. He is
But you
back.
got to play him at the right position. Talking about 2021.
Yeah.
Oh,
ups
man.
and downs.
I mean, the up was when they changed this position to corner.
Yeah.
I think he had back-to-back games of interceptions, I believe, I'm not mistaken.
That team was so bad. Rex Burkhead led the way rushing with 427. Mark Ingram was on that squad, 294, and they let him go. David Johnson, my goodness, 228. That was a terrible offensive team. But if there was any player that I would want back on this current team, I'm going to stay on the defensive side of the ball. And I'm going to say Charles Omenihu. We talk about Charles Omenihu would pair, I think, tremendously next to Nico Autry. Those are two guys that are very versatile, very, talented in terms of being able to go in and out. Didn't get the best of opportunities here in Houston. But if there's any player from that 2021 team, it would definitely be Charles Omenihu.
That's a good one. And the thing about it is Charles Omenihu is still productive to this day.
Yeah.
And man,
last year for Kansas City, 11 games, started only 1, 7 sacks for KC. The year before that, San Fran, 4.5 sacks. The year before the 2021 season, and guys, remember he was traded during that season to San Fran.
Mm-hmm.
Some familiarity there with D'Amico Ryans. But the year before that, his first 2 seasons in the league on a bad team, by the way, 7 sacks. 3 his rookie year, 4 the following year. Just didn't work out here in Houston moving forward. But since 2022, 11.5 sacks. 8 tackles for loss last year, tied his career high with 5. The last 2 seasons, 27 QB hits. You look at a guy like that, man, and he's still fairly young. Right now, he is 26. He'll turn 27 August 20th. He would match up well with D'Amico Ryans' defense, wouldn't he?
Yeah, but we
got the attitude for it too.
We talking about the defense, and I'm looking at the offense, seeing if there's anybody I would take. John, I don't think there's not one name I would put on this.
There's not one.
Oh my God! I mean, you can make an argument for Brandon Cooks, but we literally just talking about them having basically too many weapons right now. So
the only argument I would make for somebody, I'm gonna tell you an argument that I can make for somebody.
Chris Conley.
No, hell no. I could make a case for Tyrod Taylor as a backup for Houston.
That's interesting.
That would be an upgrade.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean Chris. I mean Chris Moore, because Chris Moore made some plays in the Super Bowl. Yeah. But majority on special teams. Once again, I'm just saying, how this team feel about. God, this team was so bad in 2021. Bro, their only offensive weapon was Brandon Cooks. He led the way with 1,037 receiving yards. The next closest one was a rookie, Nico Collins, with 446. Sheesh.
That was Nico.
Danny Amendola.
Nico, 13.5 yards per carry. Nico's always been a big playmaker type of guy.
Always.
After that.
Listen to this wide receiving core. Danny Amendola, Chris Conley, Chris Moore. Golly. Philip Dorsett. Oh my gosh.
Out the league.
Anthony Miller. He was
Out
only
the
here for
league.
what?
2 days.
He was only 2 days. Oh my
2 days.
God.
Out
You
the
know what
league.
we should do? We should go back and see what team was the worst, 2021 or 2022. My vote is 2022. Because there's no way still to this day they should have not only won 3 games with a random tie.
21 or 22. 22 only won 3 games compared to 4.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good question. That's a question I don't want to get into. Thank y'all for watching today's episode of the Locked On Texan podcast. Please be sure to subscribe, like, and comment to the page on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12. Let us know who you would want back hypothetically on this 2024 NFL Texans team.
Other than, I think we should play around with that. Like, which one was the worst season? Because in 2022, that was the Driscoll cat. But 2021 was a year when they said Jeff Driscoll, we're gonna convert him to a tight end because he's one of the most athletic quarterbacks that we ever seen. Boy, Houston Texans came a long way. But as always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, that's Cody, COTYDABIS_24. Yeah, they made me mad that day. If you remember that rant I had. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.